with Renee.
Yo. We wait all week and all day for more Saturdays with Renee.
Yes, indeed. Welcome everybody back to Black Liberation Media and episode 104 of Saturdays with Renee, featuring Renee Johnston. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. All the links in the show description. Renee!
What up?
How you feeling?
I'm here. They're doing something outside. There's like a construction crew down the street. I think there's something going on with like the water pipes or something. And it just occurred to me that is why my dog is acting like a weirdo, because there's too much going on outside the house and it's making him anxious. And there's all this stuff happening around the house. So he's pacing. Yeah. But other than that, listen, I'm here. I woke up this morning. I got a lot done actually this morning. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot going on. Salute to the pups. I know when we get house guests or some work is being done around here, it's a traumatic event for the dog. So, you know, but we making it work. This is again my extended birthday weekend. So I got my oldest daughter back in the house for the weekend.
Nice.
Which is the, you know, the most excitement, you know, the best gift. And
I love that you say that like she goes to school in Arizona, by the way.
I know, it's right down the street.
I'm like, she's literally like
it's right down the street.
You could literally go have lunch for her every day if you were so inclined.
Yeah. And you know, it's but it just feels you know, like it, you know, always like an eternity in between, you know, visits, and it just feels far away. So it's always nice when everybody's back. And and if folks got nothing better to do tomorrow before they tune into Sundays with the Ear Doctor, it's a free Patreon gathering I'm having at 5 p.m. Eastern for my birthday. We're gonna hang out virtually.
Now, remind me again, is tomorrow's your actual birthday?
Yeah, tomorrow's the actual birthday.
Okay,
tomorrow, right.
Tomorrow's
the actual birthday.
Make sure that I
just been extending it all weekend with little.
I feel like that's what people should do. Listen, I just figured out that my 50th birthday is on a Saturday next year. So I'm like, oof, this is gonna mean all kinds of stuff, which I'm gonna talk about for like 6 months and then promptly forget and not plan any of it so I can go to bed early on my 50th birthday. Like that's gonna end up being
what? So we're gonna we're gonna do a live Saturdays with Renee.
Oh, definitely. We'll have to do like a call in for my birthday thing.
No, I'm saying like a live event, like I'll show up there and we do the show from somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Something to consider.
We could do that.
Something.
And I think I'm definitely gonna pass through there on my way to my husband's game in Virginia in 2 weeks.
Word up.
So I'm still trying to navigate to make sure I don't jack up the time. But as long as I can make the time and work, I'll be there to do the show.
Right on. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. So peace, everybody. Good to see some of the good folks in the chat, the undefeated chat, of course. Thank you all for being here. You think you're going to be asleep for your birthday? You're not going to. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Bonnie, that's my girl. We just finalized some plans for dinner in the near future. I'm excited. I'm fine.
Word,
that's
Nice, nice, nice. So again, yeah, make sure you've liked, shared, subscribed, put this in your socials, invite others to join you in the fun. We got a great show this morning. Some of course, incredible guests, not unfamiliar to these spaces. Anything else before we bring them up that we want to do?
I no, because your story is for everybody. So I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
we have to wait until everybody comes up, and then we can start with your story.
All right, right on. So let's bring to the stage Dwayne Monroe and Mtume Gant. Musa Springer was going to join us but was unable to. So salute to Musa and to all the work that they're doing. And but Mtume, Dwayne, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning. Hello.
Although I think Dwayne's evening where you are, right? You're
it is,
you're in a whole different part of the world.
Yeah, it's 50, it's 5:06 here in Northern Europe.
Yeah, right on.
But then in Northern Europe, it's always evening.
Ah.
The darkness is always coming.
Okay. Well, I feel like this is the epitome of like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Whenever we talk about like,
but that's a fun. That phrase
fun
implies fun.
Yes.
So maybe starting with you, Dwayne, would you want to just say a few introductory remarks for the few folks around that might not be familiar with your work and may have missed some important discussions you've had with Mtume and Jared and Millennials Are Killing Capitalism and elsewhere. But please.
Yeah, thank you, Renee, Dr. Ball, and Mtume. So, yeah, Dwayne Monroe is my name. I am by trade, I guess as people used to say, a technologist. And what that means is that I have worked, continue to work with very large computational systems. My mom's friends, God bless them, mom would say, "Oh, he works with computers. Oh, he fixes PCs." No, my brothers, I don't. But nothing wrong with that because that has to be done. But no, I work with the giant systems that run the world. And what I have done over the past 10 years or so, but really accelerating in recent years, is taken that hands-on experience, that knowledge of how computation functions, what it does for corporations, and therefore what it does for capitalism globally, and then applied a Marxian lens to that, properly seasoned by the Black radical tradition, as we talked about in a previous conversation. So that's a little bit about me.
Right on.
And just real quick, I just want to point out to the world that when the world is going to end, I need Dwayne to like do the voice.
You know what? I was re-watching Konya Niskatsi, which I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw it when it was first released. And as a youngin', as I watched that in a theater, I thought, well, this is the film that should be shown on human civilization's final day. To remind those who come after, if there's any means of watching it, what led to them eating rats out of a barrel.
There you go.
Right. And so
I think if you do that, like if you say this is why you're eating rats out of a barrel, right? And like
this is the screw up that occurred that led to, rather than you living a beautiful life, you having to rebuild from the destruction that was wrought.
Definitely. Because literally I could go to sleep listening to you if I didn't hear your words. Like,
and my wife often does. And listen, I am.
That's funny. That's funny. Tell me about your day, Dwayne.
She's out.
But did you mention, did I black out? And you mentioned that you do have a podcast.
I do indeed. It's called Film Conversations, and I do it with two old friends of mine. And you can find it in the usual spots. Film Conversations, And although recently, in recent shows, it's really been more about, political economy or geopolitics, or rather the kind of the intersection of films and geopolitics. I mean, we've done multiple shows on Gaza at this point because it's irresponsible not to. And so, if you're looking for a bunch of nitwits to just say, "Oh, I like a film. Oh, I don't like a film," well, then this is not the podcast for you. But if you're looking for a dissection of the business of film, if you're looking for analysis of the role of film in our culture, globally speaking, and if you're looking for deep dives into how film influences us, well, then this is the podcast for you.
All right, so
And
now I'm like, we gotta figure this all out. We gotta bring Samantha back. We're gonna be
Yeah,
on for
Samantha's
like
awesome. It's awesome. I consider Samantha to be like my technocratic sister, because what I bring from the tech world, she brings from the film world, like just like that nitty gritty.
yeah, we need to do like a mega media criticism, event. So yeah, so folks should just stay tuned. And speaking of, I believe.
that is.
Speak
Shout out to my sis.
of the goddess as opposed to the devil. Called her up. So
and then I guess we should let Mtume go. Although I feel like it would be nuts for people not to know who Mtume is. But
like Lorik said, Mtume is not a guest. He has to do his dishes when he shows up and all of that. But like he's But yes, please go ahead. Remind
Peace, everybody. Mtume Gant. If you don't know me, filmmaker, theorist, arts, cinema dialectician, I like to call myself right there at the bottom. And happy to be back on here with Dwayne and you two always. You're all comrades, so it's great to be in conversation on this. Yeah, Within Our Gates podcast, Imperial 80s. Every Monday. I do. This Monday might even come up in this conversation, actually. But
because you all have Ori coming on Monday, right?
Yeah, and Badge of the Assassin, which I felt so conflicted watching it again yesterday on the day that I found that Assata Shakur passed. It felt like a wrong thing to do, but time with a nearly 2-year-old prevents me from being that selective with my time. So it put me in a state, right, of really.
So do I have to watch it? Because y'all be doing this to me all the time. Like, do I have to watch it, or can I?
I would watch. We have it in the show description. I would watch the Safia Bukhari doc that she did, where she interviews Julian Mutakim and everybody. Exactly. You don't have to watch the film. I think the only thing that if you feel like you need more perspective on why Black actors like Pam Grier, Yaphet Kotto, who I have a lot of love for, but need to have strong evaluation of their politics.
We're not saying nothing bad about Pam Grier while I'm around. I just need to explain the bias. You cannot.
This movie.
She still did
this movie.
Look, it's not her fault, though.
Yeah, it's not her. She was in the wrong part of her mind.
We not throwing shade at Pam Grier. Well, I can't have it happen. I just can't.
Okay.
No, I'm just playing. I'm playing.
Yaphet Kotto, and then even thinking about their trajectory, though, I think no one should be surprised that James Woods is a complete reactionary, and he would do work like this early on in his career. But yeah, if you wanted that, but honestly, man, there's nothing really there. Get it from the real people. You can listen to us talk about it and watch definitely Safia Bukhari's piece that we have linked in our show description to this episode that's coming. Watch that.
All right, we'll do.
So, as a way of segue, if you all don't mind, since you mentioned Assata and this distorted history, I do want to share, if we can, I have a brief story that'll be a nice segue into our actual discussion for today. But in advance of that, Dhoruba did send out a statement from West Africa, a relatively brief statement that echoes some things he's been saying over the years, and that I have to admit at one point was very funny for me. Well, now I can say it's funny, but at the time got me in some trouble at the Real News Network when I remember he made this point some years ago. But if I can, so this is just quoting Dhoruba here. Of course, the passing of my comrade friend, the sister Assata, is a very emotional occasion for all who loved and respected her. I won't be reduced to one-liner reflections of her passing, however. This is because her passing sheds light on this historical moment, because Black people and all African peoples find themselves. There's a very deep and significant reason why Assata found refuge and protection in Cuba, how she was able to live her life in relative freedom rather than languish in a racist American gulag. It was Cuba that always supported the radical and militant Black struggle against the ethno-white Christian settler state project, the self-proclaimed Democratic Republic of the United States. Once a Latin American colony seized from imperialist Spain and ruled by American stooges, Cuba was a whorehouse for American gangsters, and its people, the majority of whom are of African ancestry, led by Fidel Castro, overthrew the despotic American arrangement. But unlike Haiti, the Cuban Revolution was never reversed by U.S. military intervention, and so the U.S. put in place an economic embargo of Cuba that remains to this day. All during the decades of the 50s, 60s, 70s, up until today, Cuba has supported African struggles for freedom, independence, and development. Cuba gave refuge to those of us forced into exile by the machinations of the FBI, CIA, COINTELPRO campaigns. Kwame Ture, Eldridge Cleaver, and dozens of persecuted Black activists have passed through Cuba, fleeing racist American government repression. Assata's passing in Cuba, therefore, was a living testimony to this history and should cause everyone opposed to the current racist pogroms carried out against Latin American migrants by ICE and the U.S. federal government to recognize that U.S. immigration policy to make America white again has everything to do with white America's sociocultural DNA as a European settler state and its exploitation of the Caribbean and Latin America, from where the majority of so-called illegal immigrants come. White supremacist domination at home and abroad has everything to do with the Black people, with Black people in the U.S., the default scapegoats and victims of American jingoistic white skin privilege and political rule of the rich. Assata was our freedom fighter, a soldier in the BLA, a member of the original Black Panther Party when it defended the existential integrity of the Black community. She was a stalwart in our resistance to state-sanctioned murder of Black people by the police and white militias in blue costumes. She's our 20th century Sojourner Truth, our anti-imperialist Harriet Tubman in a protracted war imposed on African people since 1619. We need not get it twisted and compare mourning the demise of a racist punk like Charlie Kirk with honoring the spirit of an Assata Shakur or MLK. Black people have been at war with the ethno-white supremacist state since the 15th century, and Assata was a generational soldier in this ongoing war against the very notion of Black freedom and humanity. So don't ask whether Assata was guilty or innocent of shooting an armed agent of the state that revile our very existence as people. Assata was guilty of being a freedom fighter. She was innocent of collaborating with the enemies of Black dreams. Long live the spirit of Assata Shakur. Live like her. Dhoruba bin Wahad, West Africa, September 27th, 2025. So salute.
Salute. Leave it to Dhoruba to just boil it all down and make it plain.
Years ago, so it is like the 10th anniversary of this moment where Angela Davis had been invited onto Democracy Now! And the point was raised that Assata was innocent and therefore should be allowed back in the country. And Dhoruba, I just remember excitedly, amped up, reached out to me and said, "Bro, I gotta say something about that." And the response was similar to how he ended that statement there. The claim that she was innocent, he argued, denied her and the movement she was a part of the righteous agency and clarity and choices that they were making consciously. And he said he was strong in condemning people for using that even as a tactic to relieve the stress on her, because it was very important to him. And he even made the joke in our interview at the time. He said when he was asked about the shooting, he said, I trained her and she was a better shot than me. So don't, and she knew what she was doing that day. She was in that car on purpose. This was not an accident in terms of who she was with and why they were there and what they were doing and what so I just always appreciate that sentiment, and I always like to I can't help it. That was the one and only time I've experienced as a quote unquote journalist being censored, my work being censored. And the Real News took down the interview. We had a huge fight. It caused me a lot of disturbed energy and ruined relationships. But I was like, you can't silence Dhoruba. Like, how are you? Like, I was like, anyway, I'm just very glad that he put out that statement, and I love the energy and the analysis, and it's beautiful. So,
we shout out again to millennials who did a prompt like, let's just get on and do a thing. And so I really do encourage folks to take a little bit to go back and watch that. Hiram joined and had some really like clear things to share about moving forward, as did Ori. Ori also, funny enough, read a statement that was written by Dhoruba about Assata, 30, was this now 50 years ago? He would have written that. It was 77, close. And so it's all, it's very aligned. Assata's passing was like a rough moment for me, which is weird because not weird. I have literally no connection to her aside from knowing Dhoruba in person and knowing that Dhoruba knows Assata. Like, I've never, but I just finished reading her book again, I think for like the third time, and finished it like 2 weeks ago. Like recently just finished rereading her book. And so she was very fresh in my mind, and so I think it hit a little different because she was so fresh in my mind. But I was a mess for a good portion of the day yesterday. It was just rough. Like, I just couldn't, and this is life, right? Like, people age, they pass on. Like, this is the natural progression. She was going almost to hitting 80. She'd lived a long life.
And I do love Ori's point about that we should celebrate the fact that they didn't get her.
Absolutely.
That,
absolutely. Yeah. She lived as free as she could live, given the situation. And, my mother, y'all know I always got a story about my mother. My mother remembers when she escaped, right? Because she was here. So she literally remembers the story of when she escaped and was like, yes. So my mother has been celebrating that they never caught her. She was like, yeah, my girl got away. She lived her whole life and they never got her. So there's definitely reason to celebrate. She is obviously absolutely 100% free now. And I do, we talked, Jared, about, pulling some stuff together and doing an educational series on the works of Assata, which I'm really excited to kind of dig into. And,
Me too. I love the idea. I look forward to working on it with you. And I got some ideas we can start to build on.
There we go.
Shortly.
Spreadsheet incoming.
All right. So one more thing for me, and then I will fall back for much of the rest of the conversation, because literally on my way to Howard University yesterday, I got the confirmation from those who would know about Assata's passing, with also the encouragement that we not say anything before the family had a chance to make any statements and this, that, and the third. So I just bring that up just to paint some of the picture that is the context for what was in the back of my mind yesterday, because I'm going to Howard to this Black Blockchain Summit, which is politically the antithesis of everything about Assata. And and walking around on Howard's campus with all these literally beautiful, like I feel like yesterday, and I took long ways around campus. I admittedly, took selfies out in front of Founders Library with some of our former friends have their offices and things like that. I did my pettiness. I was there for it, but I got there early, stayed a little bit, walked around to get the vibe, and all of these incredibly beautiful Black people. I've been on Howard's campus for years, millions of times, and for some reason yesterday, the weather, the energy, the vibe, it was the perfect cliche of the stereotype of what you would think is happening at every HBCU, which is not like I've never seen days that felt like this at Morgan, and called my homeboy at Bowie. It was like, so it's this beautiful. None of it had anything to do with anything political. The cues were stepping, people singing, the Black capitalists were in their, suits and ties and, doing their stuff. But everybody was just beautiful, just shiny, beautiful. It was just this Black excellence. I go do my thing. The only critical, like just this, the sea of believers offer my analysis and criticism of the whole thing, that Dwayne and all of know way, better, and I do my thing. Then afterwards, there's usually some people that want to continue the discussion. We had a nice, for the most part, discussion. And then this is for me to highlight. I'm, one of the organizers of the event comes running over and says, Jared, that was really, oh, wow, you really, you shaking up the space. This is exactly why we wanted you to be here. This is great. I got to have you meet and talk to somebody. And, he really wants to talk with you before you get out of here. And please, and he's rushing and he runs and he comes with our boy Dax Hansen here. And Dax extends his hand and shakes my hand and says, oh, Dr. Ball, your talk was really interesting and really exciting. I just wanted a chance to talk with you. And I didn't know who he was at the time. But J. Dax Hansen is a technology, transactions, and regulatory lawyer who has pioneered blockchain, digital currency payments, and fintech law. Top industry publications have recognized him for his work at the forefront of fintech and blockchain industry for over a decade. So he's introduced to me, and he's like, as a lawyer and as a sponsor of the event, and he comes over and he says, I didn't want to take up time during the Q&A because as the only white guy in the room, I wanted to make sure all the other voices were heard. He did the very liberal, appropriate liberal thing, and then he says, his big question for me was essentially, I'm working with, helping shape the policy and the legal structure around, big crypto and blockchain. And I'm working with the Trump administration, which is very friendly to this crypto space. And I heard what your criticism was in there, but and essentially, so he said, what does your policy ask? And then I essentially reiterated my criticism, specifically of the Trump administration, where just very quickly I pointed out that he was billionaire funded into a 180-degree shift so that he could boost the investment value of those who sponsored him. We went through all of that, and I said, really, the goal is, I said, so if you were asking me about a policy ask, I would just be saying things like, well, all the wealth that's created from all of this would be used to cancel everybody's debt. And, I'm like, redistribute the wealth and this, everybody, there would be no more poverty. But I said, but I know what the issue is that Trump this is all part of a hustle to boost the investors' value, to shift the national debt onto the global, investor community with this whole reserve currency thing. And I go through this whole thing, and at the end of my thing, and so I'm like, I just don't really know what the ask would be because I just don't see anything coming. And he says, he just looked at me straight in the face with a little smile. He said, I think you're exactly right. And that was essentially and I said, okay, well, I said, thanks. And then that was essentially the end of the conversation, and we walked away. And that was, and now this is all happening off record at the end of the thing. And I'm like, this is, Now we had our conversation. There was no promise that of anonymity or off the record or anything like that. So I don't feel like I'm betraying any confidences here. I'm just sharing what was a conversation that took place, and I'm sitting there saying, like, this is my thing. And the only thing that's beautiful that I couldn't fully lay out in this quick summary is that this is happening right after I'm in this friendly but disagreeable conversation with a few brothers after the thing who wanted to, felt like they could still show me the light after hearing my criticism. And I'm like, this is like, I don't know what else to say after that. So I just wanted to share that as a segue. It was the complete antithesis to everything Assata Shakur had struggled for and what was being encouraged in that space. And it was kind of just a surreal moment after, and then I was able to get in the car and jump on with Jared and Millennials and you, Renee, a little bit, and just sort of have a brief cathartic moment sitting literally in the car parked outside our university, because I was like, this is bananas.
But
So
that
anyway,
is the sinister genius of liberalism, right? I mean, Domenico Lacerda wrote, as we all know, Liberalism: A Counter History, and I love how catty Lacerda is in this track, because he's like, well, we're told that liberals are this and liberals are that, but then there was this guy who all liberals talk about as being a hero, and oh, look at that, he was a slaver and he murdered people, and the whole it just goes through this litany list of saying, well, according to the liberals are fantastic. Let's dialogue. Let's talk about it. Dr. Ball, I have been in this situation myself where, like, an old friend of mine who's very churchy, and I'm not knocking, being churchy. Although I do tease my churchy friends and say, it's just a shame the Romans didn't crush this. But anyway, that's just me being a bastard, which I can be from time to time. I look nice, but I can be a bastard. And he introduced me to a friend of his who was like, oh, I want to meet this brother. He knows about technology. He can help me understand things better, and so forth and so on. And I lay it out. I lay out my analysis of the industry, that it is an enemy, right? That it doesn't matter that you have a tool that you use. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. They are an enemy. And then I do, as the old saying goes, chapter and verse. And he was like, oh, that was a good talk, brother. We part ways, because you can't walk down that road, right? If you walk down that road, if you begin to walk down that yellow brick road and you get to Oz, then you're in a different space. You're in a different mental space. And so to stop, you say, oh, well, thanks for the conversation, and you move on, because that way then you can preserve your friendly delusion, that you're living in a lovely world. And if you just get a good job and get a nice house, then everything's fine. You can continue that delusion by being nice, shaking hands and parting ways. So I've experienced this exactly what you described, multiple times, from people who perceive me, as quote unquote Black excellence, because, I'm clean shaven, I have a nice shirt, a good career, whatever. And then I start talking, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that was a nice talk, brother. And that's the end of it. Yeah. So that is the classic liberal move.
Yeah.
That's wild. Jared can't go anywhere without like a secret mic. Like because I don't know how you end up in these. I thought I was bad, but you really you're like the Black Larry. What's his name that had
Larry
Kirby?
David. I'm telling you, I joke all the time. The only difference between Larry David and me is a Black radical father and a more radical mother, and that's about it. I have. I feel like that is. I feel like a lot of overlap with him. He's better in his, I do say he's better in his field than I am in mine, but in terms of how we end up interacting with the world in our various spaces, there's a lot of commonality there.
It's crazy.
So,
but I will say, I at least appreciate that he didn't try to gaslight you, right? Like, we can give people at least, and maybe it's because he intuitively understood it wasn't going to work. And so like, he was like, let me not waste my time nor his time, because nothing is going to change no matter what I say, because you are, for all of your like, I'm not great at this thing, like you're very clear, right? And you understand the problem. And so there's going to be no like switching you or catching you out there or anything like that. Like that's just not, it's not going to happen. So I think for the most part, like most people, especially like business oriented people who are about making that bag, like they're not wasting not a bit of money, because for them time is literally money. They're not wasting a bit of time arguing with somebody that they know they can't do anything with, right? So for him, it's probably better that he was like, all right, peace, thanks for the conversation, it was great to meet you. Right? Like let me go, versus even trying to engage in this thing. So we can at least give that credit, that at least he knew his, he knew like where it wasn't going to work, because I suspect that's what happened. But also like the caucasity of it all, like you give all that information and to just be like, oh no, we're not doing that, we good. Like
in all seriousness, I do wonder what would have been more along the lines of what he would have been expecting in terms of when he said, what is the policy ask? And I admit I didn't have anything lower than what I shot for, so I don't know if he was expecting, some sort of, tax incentives for people starting up blockchain companies or, things like that. But, but I'm happy to go straight for the debt cancellation. Let's start there and we can work our way back from that. Because I did tell, I said, just wipe out everybody's debt. You got all this money.
Right.
Blow it through here. Let's start there.
But that's also caucasity, because he went into it having heard your speech and still for some reason thought that there was a chance that you did not have an answer that he wasn't going to be able to respond to, right? So that's also caucasity, right? Like that's also like this automatic assumption that a lot of white people make, that Black people are simply incapable of making the argument, right? And then they get mad when you make the argument, because the nerve of you to actually make, like, this is how I ended up on this email fight that I've been talking about all week with this white girl, telling me that I was playing victim and that I'm not coherent. How many emails have you gotten from me? She said my emails were not coherent. I was like, if this bitch don't think I know she's calling me stupid, like where are we going right now? But it's caucasity. Like she wasn't expecting me to counter her, right? So she was reacting to the fact that I was countering her. She wasn't even really reading what I was saying, because what I was saying was not unreasonable. But the fact that I had the audacity to counter her argument just threw her all out of whack. And here she is, like in her little signature picture, wearing her keffiyeh and talking about how, she like argues for Marxism, like all these things. And I'm like, but you still, in the end, like really, you're still just a white girl who thinks that Black people don't have no fucking sense. Like that's really what this is. Like that's what this all boils down to. And so, okay, like cool, but like I'm not gonna have this argument with you. And so I'm sure she was offended, because I was like, you know what? I think I just have too much melanin to deal with these mental gymnastics that you're able to accomplish. Like I can't do it, right? Because I'm also, as Dwayne is, like I'm just mean when I'm ready to be. Like I don't have the energy for people's caucasity and nonsense. Like go take that somewhere else. Like please. But I can appreciate when people know that they can't win. And that's literally what you did to him. He was like, I'm not going to win this fight. Let me just walk away and not waste my time. So I'm all for it. Let's do it.
I do sometimes wonder if that's also a test, because I've had similar moments like this where I'll present something at a mixed space that has a radical materialist read or something like that. And someone will come up, often a white person. It often will be white people. Black people don't do this. I think the Black people who are there, they know. They're like, this brother, actually get him out of here because he might actually ruin the whole show for all of us. But this white person will look and say, well, let me see. Let me drop something in the bucket and see maybe this Jared Ball guy, I can use him as like my spokesperson. And then he gives you a little bit of a seed and you give him the read and he knows immediately you are on the list. He adds you to the list. He's like, negative. He cannot be bought. He cannot be reasoned with. I just needed to see. Like, I don't even know if he really wanted some policy initiative. It's like a job. It's like when you go on a job interview and they give you the random test question, just to see how you answer. That's how I've experienced that. And then whenever I answer it and I never get the call back, it's very clear that this person was testing me, and they went, no.
Yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. But I am still curious if I do have a number. Like, he should have come back with, well, we can't give full debt jubilee to everybody in the country, but we might be able to set up a little blockchain foundation for you at Morgan State University. Like to be perfectly honest, that would be the way to corrupt. If I was to be corruptible, that would be the approach. In part because it would tap into my career needs and my
the question is, would
indirect warfare with Morgan State University.
Yes? Would you have said yes?
Probably not, but I don't know. I would like to see if they said we would seed you with a $20 million foundation at Morgan State University.
If you don't think that the fact that you would not say, because I already know you're not saying yes. Like you may play and haunt him and all this stuff right now, but you're not saying yes, right?
I just want to see what
people know that.
Like, I want to be tested though.
So like I'm not opposed to Mtume's theory. Like that, I could see that as well. Like let's see what the, let me get the answer and see if there's anywhere that I can tweak this a little bit. I could see that as well. But you literally, like, the air coming off of you is, don't bring that capitalist shit to me. So they're not gonna make that offer, because again, it's a waste of time. Like, you're only gonna do an offer of something that you think might work. Once it's clear it's not gonna work.
I also think though that we are almost entirely past the bribery stage of capitalist social relations. I think we are in the raw power stage, right? And so, in an earlier age, in 1990s, early 2000s, that would have been a test for you. But now we're in the propaganda, and if you don't like the propaganda, raw power. That is where we are. Because we are truly at the end stage. People have been saying this for a long time, but there was a recent, just this week, Oracle announced a massive investment in OpenAI. And at the same time, NVIDIA announced a scheme in which they would rent their GPUs to OpenAI. And so what these three firms have created is like a kind of Ouroboros, like a circular money circle jerk to pretend that they're making money, right? And it's not unprecedented, but it is such a large segment of the U.S. economy at this point. It's dangerous. And I only mention this not only because it's my beat, but because it's a signal of where we are, in which the capital that might have gone into bribery is now being siphoned into this circular death spiral of so-called AI, because that's all they have left. And so, this guy, he's trying to convince people. He's a bit old school in this. Let's have this blockchain summit and so forth and so on. Let's convince some of these middle or upper middle class folks that maybe this is a good idea. And there are people who, because their understanding of political economy has been damaged by decades of Black excellence and so forth propaganda, right? They don't understand that they're at war. They don't know that they're at war. They think that they're part of a society that wants to destroy them. This is one of the things about Assata's passing, that struck me immediately. It was that, this was a sister who knew we were at war, right? And but now we have so many of us, who just don't know that, and it breaks my heart. But this and it's a crisis for us. It's a true crisis for our people, and for the world itself. But anyway, that 20 million from Morgan State definitely would have been offered at an earlier age, right? He would have had that in his back pocket. But now it's just, listen, if I can't convince this guy, okay, the hell with him. I'm just going to keep selling my wares, because we are in the pure P.T. Barnum stage of things, and in which I'm just going to lie and get some suckers, and then if you're not a sucker, then the hell with you. And the rest of it is, like I say, just this circular, this spinning wheel of money that's going nowhere except down, down, down. And that's the situation we're in. So I don't think anybody's going to be tested like this, tested like the way you described going forward, or be fewer and fewer situations in which people are so tested.
So Renee, I don't know if you have a plan, but maybe this is a good way to move into having Dwayne and Mtume break down for us what is happening with artificial intelligence, and maybe elaborate on the point you're making there, because even at the conference at the summit yesterday, the attendant mythology is that AI is going to function like blockchain as a solution technologically to all of the societal ills, not only facing Black people, but the world. And then I'm also wondering if there's, because Oracle also was announced recently as being one of the new co-owners of TikTok.
Well, not yet.
It's not yet?
It's like this weird language that it's proposed. Trump says that China has agreed, but there's no documentation or actual signature confirming it's going to happen. It's all like this weird smoke and mirror. This thing is going to happen because Donald Trump said it was going to happen, which I feel like at this point, like, people should always be leery if he's the source of information. Like, we should be, and that's not to say it won't happen. It's just to say, like, let's just be clear. Like, it's not documentable yet. It's all like presumption based on what he has said, that this is what's coming. And so that's the word. That's what's been stated, but it has not actually been, it's not documentable yet that that's actually what's going to happen. And let's all just be reminded that we were shutting down TikTok last year and that didn't happen. And then it was going to shut down this year and that didn't happen. And now, we're going to sell it to a US company. So like, there's all these things. I know this, if it gets sold to Oracle, that thing, I won't get it off my phone fast enough, because I already don't really use it. It's just there for when people send me links so I can watch them. But we're not doing that. We're definitely not doing that. So, but I think, yes, we can move on. I did drop the link for the conversation that Mtume and Dwayne had on Mtume's podcast, because I do think it's worth people kind of going back and really listening to that, because you all had a pretty like in-depth conversation. Real quick, Brianna wants to know if she can have your contact, Dwayne. She wants you to speak at something, which I'm happy. Don't put it public, but if you're okay with me share, I'll respond to Brianna and tell her how to request it direct, and then as long as you're good with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I just quickly before you all get started, I want to point out just a couple of things that I'm sure will come up as you're discussing this thing, but some things that you said for me that were like really like, oof, like this is why we have to make sure that we continue these conversations and bring you back as often as possible. You made the statement about technology and how people who are in technology discuss technology with people who are not in technology in order to avoid answering questions. And you called it the complication of obfuscation, right? Like, you didn't say those words, but that's basically what you meant. And I was like, what a perfect, like we're just going to throw a bunch of words out in terms and hope that we confuse you enough that you stop asking questions. And also this idea that like, and I hadn't watched the movie that you all were talking about, which was they brought the computer into the bank and the bank was going to do all the things that the tellers were going to do. But this idea that they have been selling us on the future of technology that for so long that we're all convinced, and I say we loosely because, you know, I've always questioned this whole AI thing, but we've all been convinced that technology is going to do this thing that it simply is not really going to be capable of doing. And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough because people are convinced of this future possibility with tech based on things that are all made up. It's all like movies and TV shows, and like none of it's like real. Like anybody who actually reads what happens when they set robots loose in Amazon warehouses understands that they destroy shit. Like they break things, they break people. like it's problematic, right? And so those two things really, those are two of the things that really, really stood out for me. Aside from you saying that the US was a country of nitwits, which I cackled. Like I was laughing so hard that I had to like go back 20 seconds so that I could hear what you said after you said that, because I thought it was so funny. But I just wanted to point those three things out. And I know it's going to end up coming up, but I just, it was really such a poignant conversation. And I just wanted to thank you both for having it. Like, and Mtume had the nerve, by the way, to start this conversation with like, I don't invite myself onto Renee's show. Like he couldn't just like text and be like, can I come on? And like, whatever, like.
I'm feigning modesty, I know.
But unless there's something else, I think we can probably turn it over and let you all kind of get into this whole like why.
Well, I just wanted to draw the audience's attention to the image that's behind me, which is a photo that was taken of the Trinity bomb, the first atomic bomb, as it was on the scaffold in 1944. And there are engineers there. I think Oppenheimer might be in the photo blocked by me. There were several photos taken. And the reason I use this as my background is that the history of digital computation starts with atomic warfare, or with what I should say is the development of atomic weapons, and really thermonuclear weapons. Thermonuclear weapons are devices that use fusion as the source of their energy. Fusion is the source of the sun's power, which is why hydrogen bombs, as they're called, are so much more powerful than atomic bombs, like orders of magnitude more powerful, megatons of destructive capacity. And this is the symbol, the leitmotif, fancy about it, of the theme of the modern world, and the theme of computation, which is the use of computation as a means of control, as a means of warfare, of enhancing warfare, and as a means of applying our capacity to study nature, which is a lovely aspect of the human mind. But under the world that has existed since 1691, certainly, all of this talent, at least in the West, or what we call the West, has been poured into destructive means. Not everybody's evil, but that's what it's been all about. The film that you mentioned, Renee, is from, I think, 1956, called Desk Set, with Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy. Mtume, who was Joan Blondell. Joan Blondell is also in this movie, and there's another actress who's not quite as well known, whose name isn't quite as familiar, I think, to audiences who love classic film. This movie is very important, although it's not well known outside of people who say watch TCM or study classic film. It's an important film because it's the first time that in a popular setting, computers are presented as replacements for human beings. They called them electronic brains in the 1950s. But the propaganda started very early once digital computers have been created. And I keep using, as I did in my conversation with Jared on millennials, I keep using the term digital computers because there are other visions of computation that do not involve the use of digital means of organizing information and digital circuitry, which was first vacuum tubes in the 1950s and then became integrated circuits, which really perform the same switching functions as vacuum tubes, only in a smaller form factor. So what we've seen is an enhancement of technologies that have existed for some time. So the idea that we could be replaced by these so-called electronic brains, and then later we called them, computers replacing computers used to be women who did computation, like in Sears at scale and things like that. The idea that we could be replaced by this machinery is at least 60 years old, and indeed, even before the era of computation, there were fictional visions of machines replacing us, and certainly in the early 20th century, there were kind of proto science fiction stories about like robots doing things. They didn't have an understanding. They didn't have a metaphor, a machine metaphor for what would be driving that. By the 1950s, for science fiction, there was the metaphor of the computer, the reality of the computer, but then extended into a metaphor of a machine that could replace us. And then you began to see this, of course, in science fiction of the era of the 1950s, certainly in the 60s and 70s. I would argue, to your point, Renee, that science fiction, certainly in the United States, has served a kind of a counterinsurgent function. Not every science fiction author sits down and says, "How can I fool people?" But the air that we're breathing, the ideas that we're taking in, are that we could be replaced by these machines, right? And no one is bothering to actually study them. And who's helping people understand? The famous cyberpunk author, William Gibson, who wrote Mona Lisa Overdrive and several other books that started the cyberpunk literary and movie, I guess, genre, you would say, borrowed really from film noir and hard-boiled detective fiction. And in my view, not quite as good as, say, Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler, but that's my judgment. Anyway, in an interview many years ago, Gibson admitted that he had never, at the point that he had wrote the books, he hadn't even used a desktop computer, which existed in the 1980s. Many young people don't think this. Like, yeah, your boomer parents were using computers, okay? But he said he didn't even use a computer. He had no idea how computers worked. And so he just wrote this series of novels that became quite popular and depicted, these people operating through cyberspace and all of this. And it became quite popular because they were very compelling, particularly when you're a bit younger. You find them compelling. And I remember reading them and being quite excited because I, was beginning to get into computers. But the important thing is that he knew nothing. He knew nothing about actually existing computers. And that gave him the freedom, so to speak, to create these fictional visions. Well, fictional visions that then sort of enhanced the fictional visions of the 1950s and gave a kind of a more modern gloss on top of it. But it's the same idea: super intelligent machines doing their own thing, people having to operate, within these cyber worlds. We do have to operate within a cyber world. However, pulling the strings and pulling the levers are people. Palantir is not a super intelligent machine. It is an evil, crazy man at the helm of a corporation that will use data and make data available to people to make our lives more miserable, right? Globally, if they can. And so computation is a problem, but it is not a problem because the machines are thinking. And the idea that the machines are thinking comes from the fiction. And the fiction, therefore, is counterinsurgent. In my view, I propose that it's counterinsurgent, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because it disarms us. It stops us from thinking. And that's why AI, as a marketing term, is so powerful. That's why it works so well for these corporations, because the moment they throw that term at people, they go, oh, it's over, it's done. There are super intelligent machines that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a corporation. We're not dealing with Microsoft. We're not dealing with Oracle, Google. We're dealing with a machine, artificial intelligence. It's glowing somewhere, somehow, just thinking and doing things. They're not individual systems in different data centers doing different things. It's just AI. And it's coming to get us. And that's why and I was a big science fiction fan when I was younger, and and it's fine. I mean, fantasy and fiction are fine, but there's no counter to that. It's particularly in the United States. There's no counter to this fiction. There is just the fiction.
That is the demystification of AI is such a, because I've always, and funny enough, my son, who's all into the technology stuff, we've always had this agreement, which is, and we talked about this the last time you were on, which is it's going to be limited by what it can search for, right? And so it's its own worst enemy, which is that it doesn't have the capacity to actually create something from nothing, right? Like it has to already exist in order for, so, there's all, and then there's always these people who are like, but what about the machines that like teach themselves to think? And I'm like, you got that from a movie.
Precisely. There was a guy on Twitter a while ago who I got into a conversation with him, and he said, "Oh, AI can produce new things." And then he to ChatGPT, he gave a prompt like, name 10 inventions that haven't been done yet, and the prompt produced the output listed things like I don't know, phase cannons and blah blah blah, just the usual shit. And it was hilarious because people jumped into the thread and said, "You idiot! That was in the following science fiction novel. This was in the following movie. This is from Star Trek. That's from Star Wars." So as you say, the large language model simply pulled examples from from these works of fiction that it illegally, no doubt, had been siphoned into its data set, and then just regurgitate it. And of course, this guy, he tried to come back as you can always tell, like a true fool who realizes that who does not realize they've been outclassed when they try to come back at you. You're like, no, just give it up. Wave the white flag, take the L. You've been bested. But no, he said, well, I have a different prompt. The different prompt was, some other kind of thing. And again, I didn't have to say anything. People just jumped in and said, "Oh my God, you're stupid," because these are the books and the movies from which these supposedly unimagined technologies come from. They're, number one, they're all fictional, and number two, they're all cribbed from works of fiction people have written. Like, it wasn't as if you asked ChatGPT, develop a brand new source of energy, and ChatGPT said, very well, human. Here, what about nuclear fusion? What? I've never heard of it. So all the sources are from the vast corpus of human-created information. And the shame of it, the pity of this, and one of the reasons why this is an example of capitalism getting in the way, is that you could take that capacity of language models, large language model, large as in it's computationally intensive, language as in it takes in language as its input, model as in it builds a model of how we use language, and then can produce plausible output based upon what it has inputted and its capacity through statistics and very sophisticated mathematics to produce output. If we imagine Morgan State University being able to have a reliable method of going through papers that have been digitized and that go back some time, and people could actually, you know, browse through these in a way that's a bit more sophisticated than the types of searches that we do right now. That would be beautiful. It would be a beautiful application of this technology. And it would be a worthwhile endeavor, because then you could unlock lots of human knowledge that is hidden away or molding somewhere, right, in a box somewhere. But that's not what. There's no profit in that, and so Microsoft and others, are getting in the way of us doing that at scale, right? Of being able. I mean, you can do that. You can use DeepSeek or Olama or something, some of the ones that you can run locally. But most universities, they're not going to build like a cluster of computers and run this locally. They're not going to hire the people who know how to do this. They're going to be sweet talked by Microsoft into using what it offers. And although there are ways of kind of doing this, not really, because and administrators and provosts and many academics, they just don't have there's no one to advise them. And also many of them are bought and co-opted, and just and don't want to actually know. What was it? I think I quoted Zizek once. Now, the hell with Zizek. Lacan, the subject who does not want to know, right? Like there's information that you just don't want to understand, because then it upends your world. So everything you say is true, Renee. And this could be used to our advantage, but it can't be, because these corpos are the blocker. They're in the way of us being able to actually do this. There should be a public utility. There should be, research programs in which we say, hey, this is an interesting effect. These mathematicians have produced an interesting effect to this ability to produce plausible text. It's fascinating, right? I mean, it's legitimately a fascinating output of a recursive system. But we can't enjoy that. We can't play with it. We can't learn anything from it, because they're trying to control us with it. They're trying to fool us with it. Yeah.
So something recently that I've been experiencing now that I'm back in the school year, I've been tasked to teach an upper level experimental film course, which, if people know about film education, particularly film production education, experimental film is often taught very academically. Historically, you don't really get an education on how to do experimental approaches. You pretty much get the history, which is largely, a very kind of niche set of people. You don't necessarily really even get into the political work like Third Cinema, which should be considered an experimental film movement if you think about it, because it's experimenting, being contrary to the dominant norm. You get mostly this kind of art house stuff, things like, some of it very great, Anyway, so I decided to teach the course in a very political way, introducing many different things, and kind of analyzing, concepts like modes of production, so forth and so on. Which the other thing that would come up is a lot of these early experimental filmmakers were Marxists, communists, materialists. A lot of them were. So one of the things that happened this past week that I found very interesting was I decided to do like an experiment day, and we were going to do, conduct some experiments, actually use the scientific method of experimentation, get into discussion, go through stuff with my students. And when I was at we have like a film store where everybody gets their cameras from, and they were like, well, the juniors are working with this new camera, this Black Magic camera, which is this newish company that does these kinds of cameras. And when I brought the camera in, right, all the students groaned. They all groaned. They were like, oh, right. And I was like, oh, interesting. I said, well, this will come up, right, in what we're doing. And in the conversation, they were saying, well, this camera has all these buttons and it has all these things and all this like digital brain that you have to kind of go into. It's like hard to point and shoot. And they actually found that being experimental with a camera this grandiose and this many menus was actually impossible. And we got into a conversation around like artistic freedom and the ability to be free. And when you have a tool that has these amount of barriers or these amounts of different things, how it literally shapes how you work. right? And it got into it. And some students were like, I would never use a camera like this in this moment. Some were like, well, this was the really interesting one. I would just go for the presets. Right. So basically what the camera already thinks or has already determined to be the nice thing, they just load up the preset for the LUT or for the look, go into things like autofocus rather than, try to have to like mess with that, so forth and so on. And then we got into this conversation. I was like, so the tool or the piece of tech, really, let's talk about it because it's like a complex tool, is what's governing you. You are not really free to interact with this, because the other kind of interesting contradiction is my first year students, when you give them a 16 millimeter camera to work with, they get very nervous because they don't like the inability to be able to kind of have the instant confirmation of what your shot will look like from a monitor, right? When you're dealing with 16 millimeter, old Bolex cameras, you look at through a viewfinder and it's all math with a light meter, right? And they're really bothered by that. They're kind of like huffing and puffing and nervousness. I say all this to say, to kind of go back to what Dwayne was talking about with this kind of thing that's happened where think for you, right? This idea that it'll think for you, and that I had to ask my students the essential question. I said, well, who's thinking for you? It isn't just this camera. It's Blackmagic Design. It's Red. It's Ari. And then I don't know who programmed their computers, but I'm sure there are people who are connected to all of these oligarchical companies and these tech overlord companies who are working with. I said, essentially, all the art, and you question why all this stuff looks and feels the same, is because we're all using presets and predetermined functionalities that come from a very small class of tech oligarchs, right? And it's funny, my juniors, they were very, very open to this. They actually weren't, Mtume, you're being you're kind of like, going off the rails. No, they actually bought this. They actually felt this was actually like a cogent explanation, because the other thing they revealed to me is they said, as filmmakers, they've never really felt extremely free with their tools. They felt like their tools were these things that actually restricted freedom. So it's fun. I wanted to throw that because I know that extended to some of what Dwayne and I had talked about the development of these tools and these technologies and the shaping of people and how it's determining how people interact. But then, of course, just creating a limited scope of our output. And I'll add one last thing. Another thing that Dwayne and I talked about that I've gotten nervous about, and keep getting nervous, is the left's response to the using of technologies within our spaces. And there's a way that, and I'm not hostile to the kind of positivist attitude that if we need to seize the means of production of these things, that it comes from our data. I get that. I'm a Marxist in that way, but there's a way that you also have to, really expand a materialist read, especially when you get into the things that we've all talked about in this room about how things like technologies develop through things like war, so forth and so on, war logic, colonial logics, empire logics to develop these things. So this idea that you're going to take something that has a logic that is literally one of genocide and put it right into your left formation as if it's going to solve the issues that the left groups are trying to fight around: organizing, visibility, communication. That's an idealist read, in my opinion. All the things that we're supposed to be as materialists and various things are supposed to be against, we're actually going against that. We're not actually really doing the deep dive. And yeah, I'll leave it there because that's where I've been sitting in these two poles, with working with my students, working as an artist personally, and then also in the organizing spaces that I've been in. It's been a struggle, and I've been taking a very measured way in having these conversations. Frankly, I actually refer them a lot of times to Dwayne, and I say, well, look, I have a colleague. Check him out. Right. He's been in various conversations. on Renee's shows, on my show, on Millennials. Love to hear what you think. And that's really what I've been able to do. But that's where I'll leave it. It's not like I just want to throw that in there.
I mean, that's important. It's very important to mention that. Well, I mean, we all know the old saying about the master's tools, not being used to dismantle the master's house. There's a lot of truth to that. And where people misunderstand me is that they think that I'm against. looks like Jared had a internet situation. They think that I'm against computation, or they think that I'm against science or technology, and I'm not. However, what is required is, as Mtume said, a rethinking. In the novel Dune, I've torn science fiction down, and I'm going to build it up just a little bit. In the novel Dune, very much a product of the late 1960s. So flawed, but with revolutionary energy. There is revolutionary energy in that book, which I think a lot of people don't understand. There was an event in the fictional history, prehistory of that story, called the Butlerian Jihad. Yeah. And the idea was that computers had become such a dominant part of humanity's life, maybe many thousands of years ago, in the far, far future history of this civilization. So much a part of humanity's life. Humanity becomes so dependent upon the people who pull the strings, that there was a fellow named Butler who staged a holy war against digital systems, against the computation as it had evolved over time, in order to reset, in order to say, yeah, we need the function of computation. Complex societies need the function, but we don't need this means, because this means enslaves us, right? And I think that that idea, that's a kernel of an idea that I co-sign on to and I agree with, which is that whatever the future holds, whatever people will be able to build in the future, it will require a complete dismantling of the organization of information as it is currently done, because all it does is serve the interest of well, what is it? What's that term? Necropolitics. Yeah, that's what it's used for at this point, and there's no way of reforming that. This is where we get into our disputes with liberals, yeah, because they say, well, if we regulate Microsoft, if only we regulate Exxon. Exxon was one of the ones I used to get into arguments with, and I would say, well, what about regulatory capture? What about power? Right. So you go to Congress and say, hey, why don't you regulate this? And it's all undone. No, at some point, you have to actually simply dismantle. That doesn't guarantee what the future holds, but it does create the space. This is why I use this term that the capitalist class is in the way, because we don't know what we could do with this technology if they weren't in the way. We don't know what film students might do, what young filmmakers might do, if these corporations did not insert themselves into the path and say, use these presets. This is the kind of movie. It's a beautiful metaphor, but also quite dark, because, yeah, it's all presets at this point, right? This is what they're trying to do, is force us to use their presets. And so that is the limited space in which we can operate, right? When I was young and entered this field, and even before I was in the field, quote unquote, professionally, I was a young guy who was building computers. I was doing programming. I was a true, how would I put this? Like a geek nerd, whatever you want to call it, right? But I was a person who was deep into like communities of of people who tried to understand how these systems worked, and therefore tried to understand how the world worked, because we realized even in our early teen years that we are looking at something that is used to control the world, right? Even in like in the 1980s, 1990s, we knew that, we felt that. And so we wanted to understand it. And we wanted to understand the systems, because that helped us to understand the world, right? And what young people today are being deprived of, and what, to whatever extent I can, I'm trying to reinsert into the conversation, is understand the systems, to understand how the systems are used to manage the world. Because then you understand, you have a better understanding, or at least a piece of understanding, of how the world functions, right? So you say, Palantir, everyone's running scared, everyone's terrified, what do we do, yada, yada. The concerns are all legitimate, but let's analyze how the machine works. Let's analyze what they are doing. What are these databases? How's the data being collated? How's the data being analyzed? How are these different agencies being encouraged to create like a mega system? What is the history of this? Because in the 1960s, during the Vietnam War, the Robert McNamara tried to create systems in dispersing sensors throughout the jungles of Vietnam, in order to detect when Viet Cong were moving, and then record movements, the movement of people through the jungle, in order to create a map of where the Viet Cong were. So this is like what, over 60 years ago we're talking about, right? In which there was this effort to create a map of human activity. And of course, as usual, starting with war, right? And this is what we're seeing, is simply the extension of these ambitions into the civilian space. I mean, Lenin and others have always told us that, yeah, the chickens always come home to roost. Whatever systems are used against the colonies always come home. In Philly, there was years ago, there was an effort to use a system that was first deployed in Iraq. I think it was called Gorgon Stare, in which the Pentagon developed a system of observation above to determine where Mujahideen were moving. I think this was inspired by the rebellion of Maqta al-Sadr, which was quite effective, and of course ended in the Battle of Fallujah, which was one of those incidents that people don't talk about, but was a major battle for the U.S. Marines. And one of the technologies that was employed was, this Gorgon Stare. It's like, where is, quote unquote, the enemy, right? Well, this came home. In the case of Philly, the idea was that, oh, well, we'll use this just to find where the criminals are, right? So at that time, I said, well, what is this? How does it work? Because I already had that mindset. What has been drilled out of people is the urge to say, how does it work? What are our countermeasures, right? What can we do? Liberals say, well, let's just, I don't know, march or talk about how terrible it is, and try to get Bernie Sanders to do something about it, or AOC to give a fiery speech and then actually sign the bill, which is how they roll, right? But I'm saying that is not sufficient. It's not effective. You have to understand. And I think this is the real job of the left when it comes to this technology, is understand and then take action based upon understanding, not accepting corporate statements, not being helpless, it is okay to be even scared. We're all scared, right? That's entirely justifiable. But from your fright, from your terror, there has to come an understanding. This is why we admire, the Palestinians so much, because, and others, because yes, terror, but also study your enemy, right? Study your enemy and move accordingly. And this is what I'm trying to encourage people to do when it comes to to how these computational systems are deployed, is understand and then plan accordingly.
Man, listen.
Can I Renee, I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No,
wanted
you're
to
good.
ask
But
if
just
I could. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
I just want to give a heads up. So Dwayne has about 5 more minutes, right? Because you had a 90-minute window. So I just wanted to make sure, because I just realized I don't think you were on that thread when Dwayne and I went
I
back.
missed that part.
I don't think you were on it. So apologies.
Okay. No.
We were going back and forth about the time today.
So
But,
then,
I mean, in my opinion, this just means he has to come back again, which I'm all.
well, obviously, and we have a scheduled visit to my show in a couple of weeks. We can ask all of you to rejoin us there as well. So there's going to be many more conversations. But if I can push this time limit, I wanted to, I wish I had. I do wish I would have known, because I do want to play a very, very short segment to set you up to say something, just maybe that you've already said today, but I always want the point to be highlighted. So I was looking at something, just thinking about today, and
The
just
U.S. stock market has almost doubled in 5 years, mostly because 10 giant companies promised AI would change literally everything. Altman's raised billions and is already talking about spending trillions on data centers, which is a totally normal thing to say if you're planning to buy a small moon. So here's the real question. If this is a bubble, what did we actually buy?
So I'm going to stop it there. For really that point, though.
That's very succinct. It's very succinct and to the point. I mean, a few months ago, I wrote an essay for my blog about an announcement at the time that Microsoft was seeking to reactivate one of the dormant reactors of 3 Mile Island, and that triggered something in me, because I was a youngin' when 3 Mile Island almost went critical, or I think it did go critical.
I remember that vividly. Yeah, it was like in the news, like we were about to die.
And because I'm in Philly, so we are, we're downwind, and so, the people in my church knew that I was the kid who knew something about atomics, and so I was in an interesting position because I had some of the elders of the church coming to me and saying, well, baby, what do you think? And I'm like, well, Sister Smith, if it melts down, I think we will have to move. And so 3 Mile Island, vivid in my mind, and I studied that at the time intently and followed that intently, and not just what CBS and whatever was telling us at the time, but some of the other sources I had, even as a kid, I was following the atomic energy people and their publications. So when Microsoft said we're gonna reactivate one of the dormant reactors at 3 Mile Island because the demand they claimed for so-called AI is so great that we need gigawatts and gigawatts of power. It occurred to me that number one, that's not true. There is no demand. They simply are trying to gin this up because they have no other investments. But the other thing is that it is a failure. It is an indication of failure if your system is so energy hungry that you, a software company that knows nothing about this, right? I mean, but these freaking tech guys think that they understand everything. They're so annoying and dangerously so. They're like the ultimate white guys in that way. Like, oh, I know everything. I know more than even the other white guys in the room. So that if you require an aged, dormant nuclear power plant, then you have failed. You have failed, right? There is no other product, and you're lying. There's no other product. There's no other segment of the tech industry whose power requirements are so off the charts for you to produce a chatbot. Now let's pause for a moment. A chatbot that your power requirements are so great that you must reactivate a dormant nuclear reactor. That is an indication of how insane the situation has become. And that video, even in that first 30 seconds or so, captured how incredibly bonkers the situation is. And this is why I say that these guys And I'm not alone in saying this. There's others. Ed Zitron has done a fantastic job for quite some time of tracking this and being very detailed about the financials. Because whereas I focused on data center, he's been tracking the money, and I appreciate the work that he does. These guys now account for these companies now account for such a large segment of the economy of the U.S., and they produce nothing that when it crashes, and it will, and Altman saying, I need I need a trillion. I need more money than exists on Earth. And I need 17 gigawatts of power. Enough to power, I read in a data center journal, 13 million homes. To do what? Right? So this means that it's over. It's done. It's done. They're not going to get that money. They're not going to be able to produce this power. And Oracle and all these guys all they're doing is saying, we're going to build these data centers. They're not going to build them. They can't. And the United States is in a state now where it is dismantling its capacity for technocratic competence. The expelling Hyundai workers in the way that this was done it is an indication of extreme racism and stupidity, but it is also, I think, another nail in the coffin of the United States as a technocratically competent nation. Because in previous eras of the United States, the racism would have been there. Of course, it's always there. But there would have been a kind of a coordinated understanding amongst the various agencies that, well, we need this. We need this investment. And obviously, these engineers are coming from South Korea to set up a Korean constructed plant. And there would be no wild brown shirts running around, arresting people, harassing them. And there wouldn't need to be like this coordinated diplomatic maneuver to get them safely out of this madhouse. Yeah. So that is an indication of a chaotic situation, and the tech industry's demand for power and money that exceeds what is available and what is even possible is a sure indication of collapse. It is an indication of collapse. And I would say, finally, before I depart, watch this very carefully. I recommend that people set a Google alert or what have you for how this money is flowing, because it will have an impact on all of our lives. It will. This is even bigger than the dot-com bubble. It's bigger than the housing crisis of 2008, because at least there were houses, right? And at least from the dot-com bubble, there were companies that could emerge from that and can continue to provide services. These guys have poured cash into a wheelbarrow, poured gasoline on it, and set it alight, and they have produced literally nothing. I think this is unprecedented. I believe it is unprecedented in the history of American capitalism.
All right, so you're gonna have to clip that so we can put it on the rotation. And
thanks. Again, I just thought, even in that very short clip, and I'll put the full video in the show description so people can see.
Yeah.
It's a nicely animated short 7-minute video, but in that one little point, they're saying that in 5 years, there's this enormous influx, this enormous growth of the stock market, all due to this mythology. And what, of course, it means is that by growth of stock market means that those who own most of the stock, which is, a handful of people, are doing very well off of this complete nonsensical claim.
That's precisely
and it is just like what they were saying about blockchain and crypto.
Exactly.
And we're all.
And by the way, the next grift is quantum. You are starting to hear people, and you will hear more. They're talking about quantum. In CIO magazine, which I read as the way you should read a Lockheed prospectus to know what your enemy is doing. CIO magazine had a recent article, what every CEO should know about quantum. Now, the answer is nothing, right? Because you're not a scientist, you're not an engineer, you're not a systems architect, You don't know, you know less about quantum than you do about doing right, right? So, nothing. There's nothing a CEO or CIO should know about quantum unless you're curious about the topic. But your business making paper clips in Boise, Idaho, right? Well, what should I know as the CEO of the Boise, Idaho paperclip company about quantum fucking computers? Nothing. But they're looking for suckers because the smart money is beginning to realize that this AI thing, that the runway is about to end, and they're looking to have some kind of like the next thing, blockchain. Then it was AI, and the people who are still talking about blockchain, to be honest, they are the Johnny and Jane come latelys. They're still trying to squeeze juice out of a lemon that some people are making money from it. Goldman Sachs, as we've talked about before, but but the new money got into AI, and now the new money, and now the smart money that knows that AI is about to burst is saying no, quantum. Let's just do quantum, which is an experimental thing that maybe at some point will bear fruit, but and I'll say one other thing about getting back to our original point about the role of science fiction. I had a conversation with a buddy a little while ago because people are always tweaking me about this because they know where I stand. So they always want to talk and they always want to challenge me. They say, well, what about this example? Well, what about that example? Like, okay, buddy. This guy said to me, well, what about quantum? What if we could make cars drive themselves using quantum computers? I said, dude, would you explain to me how we're going to get a quantum computer, which is an experimental device, massive, into a car form factor? Tell me what a quantum computer is. And of course he couldn't answer. But he had watched something on Netflix. Maybe something that J-Lo produced, who knows? But he'd watched something on Netflix and people kept talking about quantum computers. And so he thought, well, maybe that's possible. And IBM has made a quantum computer. So IBM has made a computer that uses what they call qubits to manipulate data using quantum effects. But what's called a classical computer is actually the main interface for that to make it even marginally useful. And it's all very experimental. It has to be kept super cold for it to be superconductive and blah blah blah. All the techie geeky stuff. You're not putting that in a car. You're not even putting that in a spaceship. So no. So anyway, yeah.
Well, I, for one, want to just note for the record that now you can just be a regular guest. We'll have to bring you back because I have a question written down that I'm not even going to read because I want us to get into it. So
I don't want my wife to to come up here and
no, because you have to cook dinner.
I do.
Let's not upset the wife.
Happy wife, happy life. Keep it together.
But I do think we should have desks set on the list of review crew movies.
Oh yes,
we can bring Dwayne and Samantha in and do a whole thing. So that'll be the next thing. I'll start scheming on that one. But Dwayne, as always, I'm so appreciative of your willingness.
Thank you very much.
Join and
thank you, everybody.
Always good to hang, Dwayne.
Yeah. See you soon.
Peace. All right. Big salute to Dwayne Monroe. Make sure you do check the shows he's been doing with Mtume, Jared Ware, Millennials Are Killing Capitalism.
And he's gonna be on there again this week. So I had a question about like this whole thing with Microsoft and how they dimed out Korea, but then tried not to dime out Israel. And then they found out that they dimed out Korea, but then lied about not being able to dime out Israel, even though they clearly are able to do it because they dimed out Korea. And so now Microsoft is not, they're trying to claim that they're not going to, do the thing with the IOF, which I'm still questioning if that's if they're saying that, if they're actually going to do it. But because I really like Jared Ware and I never ever want to be on the wrong side of Jared Ware's brain, I know he's going to be talking about, they're going to be talking Gaza and Palestine when when they're on. So in the effort of making sure I don't jack up their conversation.
Well, just, in a similar vein. So Dwayne originally, we had worked out originally, Dwayne was going to co-present with me at the blockchain thing yesterday. At the last minute, they said that was no longer possible technologically because of some other thing that they had set up. So
because they were afraid he was going to come and blow all their shit up.
I don't know what they knew or thought. But so we had sort of worked out an outline for that presentation, and then as I said, I got this last minute change, so we agreed in a couple of weeks that's when he would come back to my show to finish that discussion, and I'll make sure you all are invited and clear on that. Yes, and can join if possible. Please. But
so is that is that like a presentation that you two put together?
We did. We had put an outline of it together and figured out how we were going to, these were the things I wanted to touch on. These are the things he wanted to touch on, and how we were going to do it. And essentially it was going to be me, with prearranged, questions and ideas it was going to be, in short, an interview, me interviewing him, and then him mapping out and graphing out the argument. So he's, I believe,
this what you're going to do?
That's what we're going to do. I think it's the 14th of October. It's a couple weeks. So we just said, well, we'll just do it on my show instead. But my time got cut in half. So that was the other thing. I didn't really mention that. So, and I'll give them, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it all was up on the up and up. But initially the presentation I was slated for 2 hours. And I had told them, after I had attempted to get us flown to Amsterdam to tape it from there, that we would do this virtually with Dwayne being projected in. We would set up a way for him to present his screen, me to do this interview. I met separately with one of their tech people. Like, I actually left a lot of the story out, but I met with one of their tech people off air beforehand to make sure everything was all set up. And then literally, like, I think less than 24 hours, I think Thursday morning, I got a call saying you're from 2 hours to 1 hour, it's starting later, and we can't do the technological looping in of a guest, from somewhere else, because of the technology setup that they had and what they were trying to do with projecting their Slido thing on the screen. So they had a whole, it was a whole thing. So I was like, fine, whatever. I'll come in there, do my thing. Dwayne will come back. We'll make it happen when there's no rush and no time, no whatever. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really hilarious that a place, blockchain, high level technology, and they can't figure out how to do a feed from. It's not like you're trying to get the dude from Jupiter.
To be fair, again, like, they had a plan for the conference where this thing that I had never heard of, Slido, was going to be used, which would allow participants to communicate live in real time, and then they were going to project. And apparently they did. I just didn't see it. Some of the words and questions that were coming from the audience would be projected onto the screen behind me, and they had this whole. They had relatively speaking, a pretty high tech situation set up in there, and a whole team. And so I just think that's why it was a little bit more complicated than we can't do a Zoom thing, but
that's part of the point, though, to me, about, I know kind of what we've been talking about and what I've experienced. You create these hurdles because you have all these kind of fantastical ideas because they look sexy, or they have these sexy appearance things that, like, you could often, I think, question like the real functionality of it, other than like it having like pizzazz. So when you want to do like the simple thing, I want to feed somebody in and do a thing with them on a feeder, like, now we can't do that. It's like, that's, to me, shows you that you've created a monster that like is just there for pizzazz. I mean, I think one of the things that I really appreciate having conversations with Dwayne, he's one of the few people who do this with technology, is he proves that like how much of this is all like fictitious capital. This is just really junk made to consistently for these people to find new markets because they need to keep looting because they have no new ideas, and also the contradictions of capitalism they just can't deal with anymore. So they're just like, look, we're not going to lose capitalism, we're not going to go to socialism, we're not going to let this thing, you know, go into that, we're not going to give the people who want something different the difference, we're just going to basically make up new shit constantly. Like I was so happy he said that about quantum, because like literally I already hear it. People were like, you think AI is real? Wait to quantum, man. And I'm always just like, and then like I it's funny he said that. I asked someone to explain to me what it was, and they did not know. They just said it's just something I saw on the internet.
Yo,
and I was like,
this
I
dude,
gotta stop.
this dude who was trying to convince me of how wrong I was yesterday afterwards, and I'm again, I think a perfectly nice guy, whatever. He's doing that same kind of thing where I'm being upfront. I said I'm coming to this as a critical Africana and media studies guy. I am not an engineer. I am not a technologist. I'm not a professionally trained economist. And so his point, his attack, his approach afterwards was, you just don't understand the tech. And he starts running through all the term. You could hear all the slang and the terminology they use, and it's all this. And I said, and I just kept saying, but my eye is only on the end result and the distribution. So I'm like, I don't pretend to have followed everything you just said there. Show me where that ends up with poor people having money. Then it's all of a sudden, I want. And I'm like, yeah, that's my only thing. Like we could go all day. You're right. I don't know all of the whatevers, you know, all of every bit of technological this, that, and the third. But I do know that 1.73% of the Bitcoin wallets got 93.5% of all the Bitcoin in them. So I'll just rest with that simple methodology if I can't follow every, you know, all the fancy words.
Listen, I think in the end, like the real lesson.
Like, but the ledger. That's what they were saying. It's a permanent ledger. And I'm like,
I don't know how I don't know how. Like, I feel like this is, for right now, this is like the best way to do it, is like to just have these very clear explanations of why everything you're being told is absolute nonsense, right? And I don't know that there's like another way around this fact, right? Like, people simply just, and it was so funny listening to him say, like, you saw that in a movie, right? Like, you heard that, you read that in a book. Like, this is not, none of this is reality. None of it is based on something that actually happened that they're now telling you, like, this is how it went. Like, this is like the reimagining of reality based on someone else's fiction, which is really crazy when you think about it. Like, it's wild. But, you know, I think I like this idea that we're just going to try our best to keep telling people. And sometimes I go back in my head to the day when Jared, me and you were talking about, like, people always complaining because you didn't give like what do we do answer in the book. And I said to you, well, you don't need to tell them that. Like, the book is what you're doing. You're getting people to understand that the thing they think they know is not reality, right? Like, you can't have any like, if I'm trying to talk to you about how we get to a place and my understanding of where we're going is different than the person's understanding of where we're going that I'm talking to, we can't have a conversation about directions. We don't even agree on where the hell we supposed to be ending up. So we got to fix that part first, right? Like, we had to get to the place of everybody understanding that we are all living in the upside down. right? We're all living in the place where we have been consistently fed this reimagining story of what life is about and what we have and what we're being told. And so now, and like, seriously, y'all ruined me. I can't watch anything and enjoy it. Like, Jared was the first one, then Mtume added to it, and then y'all brought Samantha in, and she just completely destroyed everything. Like, I can't enjoy shit. Like, I can't watch anything and just watch it, right? So, like, but I think it's also good, right? Like, it's very unlikely that at any point in the near future, I'm going to fall into the trap of something that someone else is trying to sell me, because I go into everything critically. And the minute I don't hate something, my first response is to pick my phone up and text y'all, right? Like, somebody
But that's the methodology.
tell me.
That's the real method. We cannot do this by ourselves. There is no, I'm a figure it out and walk through the raindrops and all that and stay dry on my own. It's not, we got to. So as long as they don't cast a chubby Jeffrey Wright in the film, I think I'm good. I think
that, and then going to see highest to lowest has given you an immunity. I haven't watched it yet. I'm gonna probably watch it yet either. I'm probably going to comparison.
Please, please, if you do, it's so apparent. But I really only need, even just watch the first 3 minutes or 2 minutes. It's that opening. Spike, I swear Spike is just saying it. It's that sweeping camera, long sweeping to show you we're starting down here, but we're going way up to see a little teeny Denzel on this balcony of this beautiful penthouse building overlooking and it's like he's just saying, I'm taking you up here because this is the viewpoint we're looking at everything from. I'm not down here anymore. I'm not doing the right thing anymore. I'm not school days in it anymore. Even to all their flaws, he was still down in the mix trying to do some stuff. He's like, nah. We up here, $19 million penthouse, baby. And that's how we telling our stories now about blackness and the police and rap music. It was.
Yeah. And I don't even, do I have to?
I'm only doing it. I'm doing it mostly because I do quite like the Kurosawa High and Low. I think it's a really great film. And Kurosawa is not particularly one who I felt had great class. Like, his films are necessarily about class. So you could make those arguments in some of the films about like how he dealt with like the feudal order and like feudal kind of relationships. But like his contemporary films are necessarily when he would do, or contemporary when he was shooting. But that film has a very interesting like class read. And when I heard Spike was doing it, I was like, what you're talking about, Jab, like my red flag. I was like, oh, no. The absolute worst person to adapt this film. The worst. I said, oh, okay. So I'm going to watch both of them and do a comparison but I also do find it interesting because it's not just Black directors who do this. When these American filmmakers take these pieces and they rework them under the logics that exist here, it's weird at its its nicest, and it's nefarious, dirty, all types of shit at its worst. It's really nasty. But no, I'm gonna watch it probably this coming week.
It's also, it says everything about where we are and aren't in terms of the whole hip hop and music industry narrative too. I mean, I was saying that this film, it's a Kurosawa remake, but it could be seen as a fictional dramatic retelling of Clarence Avant's story, The Black Godfather. It's that the Black colonial informant.
We would Mtume like reeling. Like,
I mean, your approach. Just never mind the film stuff. The music, rap history piece of it is going to infuriate you alone. I mean, it's so the whole thing is just disturbing what he did there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you know.
I had a homie. He hit me about it. He was like, he's not really a movie watcher, but he was in the music business for a long time, and he was like, "This is bullshit, dude." And I watched your video, Jabbo, on that and about the Clarence Avant thing, and like, look, me and you had the same response when I saw that. I was like, "What?" I said, why are we not calling this the Black Gatekeeper? Like, I don't understand. Like, what am I watching here? I was like watching the entire dot, waiting to be like, "Oh, wait a minute. This is supposed to be someone that I'm supposed to honor." You just basically told all the things that we said, and there's some secret gatekeeper out there that none of us know who it is. You just literally let us know that the conspiracy that we all had with no real actual tangible information, you just confirmed it with this.
There
dude.
it is.
You just
and
confirmed it.
he said his whole thing was black people got to pick up stuff by the bootstraps. And then he says, but when I fell down, that white man bought me a house. I will never forget that shit. I was like, what are we talking about? What bootstraps? He bought you a house. You know, I was like, what? And not some poop butt, you know, small business loan, Kamala Harris home loan house. No Evanston, Illinois reparations house. These are $500,000, $1 million LA Beverly Hills houses type shit. It was crazy. Yeah.
All right.
But you're right.
Well,
He snitched. It was a snitch.
All right. So I'm going to watch it now because I don't like watching y'all talk about stuff that I'm like, not like. I like to like have the first hand.
Don't
like,
watch Badge of the Assassin. No, you good.
No. I'm going to watch the documentary that you said to. I'm.
Oh,
yeah.
the Bakari, yeah, Sophia, yeah.
But don't watch Badge of the Assassin. It's just like so. It's just
so bad.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, and I'll talk a lot about this, is like we have to credit things like that for Law and Order, which later came a couple of years later. You have to credit things like Badge of the Assassin for Law and Order. It is a logic. So in that way, it's informative of a logic that we were all raised on. That was very popular. That liberal logic of, yes, you might have a grievance, but a response that goes beyond the laws that are set here in the U.S. is unprincipled, no matter how you cut it. It is the Jack McCoy, Sam Waterston logic that we've gotten for decades.
And remember, the original prosecutor on that series, that white boy quit because he said they're too liberal. He said Dick Wolf
Like Moriarty
was too liberal, and then said, I'm out. I'm going to Canada to hate on these Negroes from a whole other country. And then and yeah, so Dick Wolf is our generation's Tricky Dick. For those who miss Nixon, we got our Tricky Dick through Dick Wolf. That because he said it. I'm here to bring law and order through TV. Like he was like, I'm not playing. I'm here for the police. Get this shit in check.
Listen, I can't.
And I watched so much of that bullshit.
Oh, so
me too.
much of it.
It was every day in my crib. Every day it was on.
So much of it. And there's like 80 different versions. And, you know, you have seasons. And then you have the FBI one. And listen, now I'm obsessed now. I watch them all the time so I can laugh at all the ways cops prove that they're totally incompetent. Like all of these shows simply point out how effing incompetent they actually are. Like just totally incompetent.
Southside. Gotta watch Southside. They canceled it because it's hilarious anti-propaganda, fronting like propaganda. That's the only way I can enjoy police on that show.
There you go. All right. Well, man, I have to go pack some bags. Yeah. Well, I'm headed out to Newark. We're doing our returning citizen support group bag packing. I'm very excited. There were 1,400 items on the list that we were hoping people would be able to donate and bring. We're just over 1,000 of the 1,400. So I think we'll be able to put together like 60 or so bags that they can bring to the gate to greet folks when they are being released from the punishment bureaucracy buildings.
Punishment bureaucracy.
So I'm really excited, and you know, if folks are in Jersey and want to stop by, there's a lot of stuff that has to be packed up. Feel free to come to the Newark Conservatory. That's where we'll be putting the bags together. But this was an endeavor. This has been like 6 months in the making, us trying to do this. So it's a CMB Newark product, and I'm very like excited that we were able to do this and get stuff together. I got a whole literal backseat full of bags with stuff in it that people dropped off. So I'm excited. So I'm headed out to do that. Jared, I will definitely see you tomorrow for the birthday. I'll stop in for a little bit.
I appreciate it. Yes, if folks
say hello.
Come on through.
I'll do a quick drop. I'll probably have the baby with me. I'll do a quick drop.
No stress. If folks can come through, come on through. I'm just gonna be hanging out. It's not gonna be anything. It's gonna be a lot of silliness. It's gonna be some. I'm just gonna be chilling, finishing my Uncle Nearest, hanging out, playing some music. And so Renee, thank you very much. Mtume, always a pleasure. Thank you. Big salute to Dwayne, of course, to the undefeated chat. Please do all the things to support the platform. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Patreon link is in the show description. Stay tuned for much more content there as well. And as always, peace, everybody. Only because you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll see you next week with more Saturday with Renee.